They spent Christmas in Vegas and never came home. Later, demolition crews find this in secret prison. The streets were lined with bare trees dusted with frost, and the smell of wood smoke from chimneys filled the air. Christmas was approaching, and for most families it was a time of warmth, comfort, and togetherness. For Mark and Lisa, however, this year felt different. They had been working hard all year, Mark at the local hardware store and Lisa as a school teacher, and they had decided to reward themselves with a holiday they would never forget. They were going to Las Vegas, a city of lights, excitement, and endless possibilities. Packing their small suitcases, the siblings were careful not to forget anything. Lisa made sure they had extra warm clothes. After all, even though Vegas was warmer than their hometown, nights could still get chilly. Mark double-checked the hotel reservation on his little notebook, ensuring everything was in order. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, an excitement that seemed to make the cold winter morning fade away. Their parents had been supportive, though a little hesitant. "Be safe and call us as soon as you arrive," their mother reminded them for the third time, her voice tinged with worry that she tried to hide behind a smile. Their father nodded silently, patting Mark on the shoulder, though his eyes betrayed concern. The Harpers' journey began with a drive to the nearby airport, a routine that should have felt ordinary but instead felt thrilling. They had never flown together before, and the hum of the plane engine as they ascended into the clouds was a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Lisa gazed out the window, marveling at the blanket of white snow covering their town, while Mark tried to hide his own butterflies by reading a magazine he had brought along. As the plane cut through the sky, neither of them could have imagined that this holiday would soon turn into one of the most mysterious and haunting events of their lives. Upon arriving in Las Vegas, the city seemed like a completely different world. The sun was bright, reflecting off the shiny surfaces of the high-rise buildings, and the streets were crowded with people from all over the country. The famous strip stretched before them, a dazzling display of neon lights, music, and laughter. Mark and Lisa could hardly believe their eyes. "It's like another planet," Lisa whispered, her eyes wide with wonder as they stepped out of the airport and into a cab that would take them to their hotel. Mark smiled, feeling the weight of the year melt away in the midst of all this energy. Their hotel was modest but clean, with friendly staff who welcomed them warmly. The lobby smelled faintly of pine and cinnamon, reminiscent of Christmas, and the twinkling lights strung across the ceiling made it feel festive. After checking in and settling into their room, Mark and Lisa took a moment to just look around. Outside the window, the city never slept. The streets buzzed with energy, and for a moment they felt completely free, like nothing in the world could touch them. They planned their first evening carefully, wanting to experience everything: the casinos, the shows, and the famous buffets that seemed to go on forever. Their first night was magical. They wandered along the strip, holding small bags of souvenirs, laughing at the street performers, and stopping to admire the fountain shows. They shared a meal at a small restaurant that overlooked the famous Bellagio fountains, the water dancing in sync with music, casting reflections across their happy faces. Mark and Lisa felt a bond, a closeness that went beyond ordinary sibling love. They were sharing something rare, a sense of adventure and discovery that made them feel alive in a way they never had before. As they walked back to their hotel late that night, tired but happy, they exchanged stories about their favorite moments of the day, not noticing the subtle glances of strangers in the crowd. Christmas Eve arrived, and the Harpers were determined to make it memorable. They started the day with breakfast at a local diner, laughing at the quirky decorations and the festive music that played softly in the background. Mark insisted on taking a photo of Lisa in front of a giant Christmas tree made entirely of candy canes, while Lisa playfully rolled her eyes but agreed. They spent the afternoon visiting different attractions, From the towering hotels with their elaborate themes to the small shops filled with trinkets and gifts. Every moment seemed perfect, a memory they would treasure forever. That evening, they decided to call their parents. Sitting side by side in the hotel room, they spoke into the phone with warmth and laughter. "We've never seen anything like this," Lisa said, describing the dazzling lights and the strange, colorful people they had met. Mark added his own excitement, explaining the thrill of trying their luck at the slot machines, though they had promised each other they would only play for fun. Their parents were happy to hear their voices, though the small, lingering worry was impossible to hide entirely. They reminded them to be careful, to avoid talking to strangers, and to come home soon. The call ended with promises and hugs over the phone, a small anchor to the world they had temporarily left behind. After the call, the Harpers decided to enjoy the evening fully. They wandered through the casinos, marveling at the bright lights, the spinning machines, and the laughter of people who seemed carefree. Mark won a small amount at one of the slot machines, and Lisa cheered, clapping her hands in delight. They celebrated with a dessert, a shared chocolate cake, before stepping outside to feel the cool night air. The city was alive, and it seemed as though nothing could touch them. They walked hand in hand, sharing stories, jokes, and dreams of future adventures. As they returned to their hotel room that night, the excitement of the day still coursed through them. They talked about their plans for Christmas Day, about visiting more attractions, and maybe even trying a small show they had seen advertised on the strip. Everything felt normal, safe, and happy. Little did they know, these were the last moments of ordinary life before their adventure took an unexpected and haunting turn. Mark and Lisa went to bed that night with smiles on their faces, exhausted but content. The city outside continued to buzz with energy, neon lights reflecting off the windows, and the distant sounds of laughter and music drifting into their room. They had no idea that their joyous holiday would soon become a mystery that would puzzle people for years. Their parents, unaware of the approaching darkness, slept peacefully back home, trusting that their children were safe and sound. The Harpers' first part of the journey to Las Vegas was filled with wonder, laughter, and warmth. Every step, from the moment they left their snowy hometown to the first night of neon lights and festive music, painted a picture of joy and sibling love. The excitement of the city, the thrill of adventure, and the comfort of knowing they were together created memories that would remain with them forever, even as the shadows of uncertainty slowly began to creep closer. The morning after Christmas Eve began quietly for the Harper siblings. The city of Las Vegas, which never truly slept, seemed calmer in the early hours, with only a few street sweepers and delivery trucks moving along the glittering strip. Mark and Lisa woke up refreshed, excited for another day filled with adventure. They had a simple routine planned for the morning: breakfast at a nearby cafe, followed by a stroll through the festive decorations scattered around the city. Everything seemed ordinary, just like any other holiday trip. Yet the city held secrets in its shadows, and this ordinary day would soon take a turn that neither of them could have imagined. After showering and dressing, Lisa suggested they take a walk outside before breakfast. The cool morning air was refreshing, and the neon lights from the previous night still lingered faintly against the rising sun. They laughed at the unusual mix of tourists who were already wandering the streets, some in pajamas after a long night of excitement, others clearly in a rush to make it to shows or breakfast buffets. Mark pointed out a small street artist painting portraits on a cardboard easel. Lisa, always curious, insisted on getting their caricatures done. They posed for the artist, enjoying the lightheartedness of the moment, completely unaware that these carefree hours would be among the last times they moved freely in the city. Breakfast at the cafe was warm and cheerful. The smell of fresh coffee and baked pastries filled the small room, mixing with soft Christmas music that played on the speakers. Mark and Lisa chatted with each other about what they wanted to do next. Mark had always been drawn to the bustling energy of the casinos, fascinated by the lights, sounds, and games. Lisa, on the other hand, wanted to explore the city's history and see some of the landmarks they had read about before arriving. Despite their different interests, they enjoyed planning the day together, agreeing to meet up later and share their experiences. It was a perfect sibling adventure, filled with laughter, curiosity, and excitement. As they stepped out of the cafe, the streets seemed busier than before. Tourists and locals alike moved along the sidewalks, some in a hurry, others lingering to take photos. Mark and Lisa took care to stick together, holding onto their small backpacks with essentials and a few souvenirs from the previous night. They were careful to stay alert, aware that a city like Las Vegas could be overwhelming, especially for travelers unfamiliar with the crowds and the endless streams of people. Even so, they felt confident in their ability to navigate the streets, enjoying the sense of independence that came with being away from home. It was late morning when Mark noticed a man leaning casually against the wall of a small shop, watching people pass by. He seemed friendly at first glance, with a warm smile and easygoing body language. Lisa, who was naturally trusting, waved at him when their eyes met. The man waved back, introducing himself as James. He explained that he was a local who enjoyed showing visitors around the city and offered to give them tips on places that weren't crowded with tourists. Mark and Lisa hesitated at first. Their parents had reminded them repeatedly not to trust strangers, especially in a city filled with unknown dangers. Yet, James seemed harmless, and there was something persuasive about his manner. His knowledge of hidden restaurants and quiet spots in the city intrigued them, promising a different experience than the typical tourist attractions. After a short discussion, they agreed to follow James for a little while, intending to explore a small art gallery he recommended. The gallery was tucked away on a quiet side street, a stark contrast to the bright lights of the Strip. Inside, they found paintings, sculptures, and photographs that captured the spirit of Las Vegas in ways they had never imagined. The Harpers were fascinated, asking questions and taking photographs to remember the experience. James seemed genuinely interested in the art, explaining the background of the artists and the meaning behind each piece. Mark and Lisa felt relaxed, enjoying the change of pace from the bustling streets outside. Hours passed quickly as the trio explored the gallery and nearby streets. Lisa suggested taking a short break in a small cafe she spotted along the way, and they all agreed. Over coffee and pastries, they talked about life back home, their plans for the future, and shared laughs about trivial things. James seemed personable, someone who could easily earn their trust. Mark and Lisa still remembered their parents' warnings, but in the moment, the city felt safe and vibrant, and the warmth of human connection made it easy to let their guard down. After the break, James suggested a short walk to a quiet area where they could see a hidden fountain he claimed most tourists never found. Mark and Lisa were hesitant at first. It was off the main roads, slightly isolated and unfamiliar. But James assured them it was safe, and the curiosity in their hearts won over their caution. As they followed him, the streets became quieter, and the festive decorations grew sparse. Mark's instincts tingled slightly. Something about the stillness felt unusual, but Lisa brushed it off, pointing out that every city had its calm corners away from the crowds. Eventually, they reached a narrow alleyway behind an old building. It was almost empty, except for a few scattered trash cans and some graffiti on the walls. James led them further in, pointing toward a small door barely visible in the shadows. "Just a little further and you'll see the fountain," he said with a reassuring smile. Mark felt a knot in his stomach but tried to mask it with a casual grin. Lisa, excited and trusting, held his hand briefly before letting go to walk toward the door. The excitement of discovery mixed with a subtle tension in the air, a feeling that something was not entirely as it seemed. When they entered the building, it was dimly lit, with the faint sound of water echoing in the distance. James guided them through narrow hallways, occasionally pointing out interesting architectural details. Mark and Lisa tried to remain cheerful, focusing on the adventure rather than their growing unease. They eventually reached a small room where the fountain was located. It was beautiful in its own quiet way, with water cascading over stones into a tiny pool. They took photographs and marveled at the hidden gem, appreciating the uniqueness of the place. For a moment, it felt like a private world, a secret that only a few people would ever know. However, the moment of wonder was short-lived. As they turned to leave, Mark noticed that the door they had entered through was now closed and locked. He tried to pull it open, but it would not budge. James, who had been smiling moments before, now had a different look, something colder, more controlled. Mark and Lisa froze, realizing that they were trapped. Fear began to creep in, a feeling they had not experienced before in their lives. The excitement and joy of the morning vanished, replaced by uncertainty and panic. They called out for help, but their voices seemed swallowed by the thick walls of the building. Mark tried to reason with James, asking why the door was locked and insisting that they leave immediately. Lisa, trembling, whispered to Mark that they should stay calm and look for another way out. The sense of being trapped in an unfamiliar place with no clear escape was terrifying. Hours seemed to pass as they searched every corner of the small building, trying doors, windows, and even air vents, but nothing worked. Their phones had no signal, and the small backpack of essentials they had brought offered little comfort. What had started as an exciting adventure now felt like a nightmare unfolding in slow motion. As night approached, the fear became more intense. The city outside was alive with lights, music, and laughter, but inside, the Harpers felt completely alone. They huddled together for comfort, whispering to each other about what to do next. Mark tried to remain rational, suggesting they look for any sign of exit or call for help, while Lisa relied on her instincts, searching for anything unusual that could lead to freedom. The room seemed endless, each hallway identical to the next, with shadows playing tricks on their eyes. The energy and joy of the morning had transformed into tension and anxiety, leaving them unsure of what the next moment would bring. They began to realize that their situation was more serious than they had initially thought. James was no longer friendly or helpful. He spoke less and moved with purpose, watching their every action closely. Mark and Lisa understood that their trust had been misplaced and that their carefree adventure had been exploited. Panic mixed with determination as they tried to figure out how to escape and survive. They whispered plans to each other, trying to remain calm despite the fear that threatened to overwhelm them. As hours turned into an uncertain night, the Harpers stayed together, finding comfort in each other's presence. They promised to remain strong, to keep their hope alive, and to never give up. Outside, Las Vegas continued its celebrations, unaware of the unfolding story of two young travelers trapped in a hidden corner of the city. The day that began with laughter, excitement, and discovery had transformed into a test of courage, endurance, and hope, a story that would haunt the city for years to come. Years passed after the disappearance of Mark and Lisa Harper. The city of Las Vegas moved on with its endless rhythm of lights, music, and crowds, seemingly indifferent to the quiet, haunting mystery that had lingered in the background. Investigators had searched tirelessly for clues, following every lead and speaking to countless people who might have seen or known something about the siblings. Yet, for all their efforts, Mark and Lisa remained missing. Their trail vanished as if swallowed by the city itself. Families, friends, and even strangers who had heard the story were left with more questions than answers, and the Harpers' absence became a silent, unspoken sorrow that touched the community deeply. Life for their family was difficult. Their parents struggled to carry on, clinging to hope while living with the painful uncertainty of never knowing what had truly happened. Friends and neighbors offered support, checking in often, bringing meals and sharing comforting words. Yet nothing could erase the daily worry, the gnawing fear that they might never see Mark and Lisa again. Time passed slowly, with anniversaries of their disappearance bringing renewed grief and memories of happier days. Every holiday, every milestone was shadowed by the loss of the two siblings, leaving a gap that could never be filled. Then, nearly 10 years after that fateful Christmas, a chain of events began that would finally bring the truth to light. In downtown Las Vegas, a large, old building was scheduled for demolition. The structure had long been abandoned, neglected, and forgotten by most of the city's residents. Over the years, it had changed hands several times, each new owner failing to make use of the space. Cracks in the walls and ceilings revealed years of wear, while graffiti covered much of the exterior. It had become a quiet, eerie landmark, visible only to those who happened to pass by. As demolition crews prepared to tear it down, they had no idea that the building harbored a secret that would shock the world. The work began slowly at first, with crews removing loose debris and cutting through old walls. The sound of machinery echoed through the empty streets, and the dusty air made the space feel even more desolate. Among the demolition team was a veteran worker named Tom, who had seen his share of old buildings being torn down. He moved carefully, aware of weak floors and hidden dangers. As he approached one corner of the building, he noticed a strange indentation in the wall, almost like a panel that had been sealed over many years. Curiosity got the better of him, and he motioned to his team to investigate. Using crowbars and hammers, the workers began to carefully remove the wall covering. As the panel came away, a hidden doorway revealed itself, dark and narrow, almost blending seamlessly with the surrounding walls. A cold draft escaped from the opening, carrying with it a faint, musty smell. The workers paused, exchanging glances, unsure of what lay beyond. With cautious steps, they shone their flashlights into the passage. The beam revealed a staircase leading downward, carved out of concrete and metal, descending into darkness. It was a hidden space, designed to be completely concealed from the outside world. Tom led the way, motioning for the others to follow. As they descended the staircase, the air grew colder and heavier, and the faint smell of dampness became more noticeable. The walls were lined with reinforced concrete, and the narrow corridor seemed endless, twisting in ways that made it hard to tell how deep they were going. At the bottom, the staircase opened into a large, dimly lit room. The sight that met their eyes made them freeze in disbelief. What appeared to be a small, secret prison lay before them, completely enclosed and hidden from view for years. Inside, the room was eerily silent, filled with dust and the faint remnants of human presence. Personal belongings were scattered across the floor. Small pieces of clothing, journals, and photographs, some of them worn and faded from age. There were even small holiday decorations, carefully preserved, as if someone had tried to hold onto moments of comfort and normalcy. Tom moved closer to examine the items, realizing with growing horror that they belonged to Mark and Lisa Harper. The discovery was unbelievable, a chilling confirmation that the siblings had been trapped in this hidden prison, unknown to the outside world for nearly a decade. Emergency services were called immediately. Police officers, forensic experts, and detectives arrived at the scene, carefully cordoning off the area. The room was photographed and examined in painstaking detail. Investigators found evidence that suggested the siblings had been confined for a long period, with signs that someone had deliberately kept them there, hidden from everyone. Journals revealed daily routines, attempts at self-expression, and small notes that hinted at hope and fear intertwined. Each page told a story of resilience, courage, and the struggle to survive under impossible circumstances. As the investigation unfolded, the city and the country at large were stunned. Media outlets reported on the discovery, calling it one of the most shocking hidden spaces ever found in Las Vegas. People were horrified to learn that such a place could exist in the middle of a bustling city, right under the noses of thousands of residents and visitors. For the families and friends of the Harpers, the revelation was bittersweet. Relief mingled with grief as they finally understood the truth of what had happened, yet they mourned the years that had been stolen from Mark and Lisa's lives. Forensic teams worked to piece together the timeline of events. By analyzing the items in the secret room and cross-referencing them with historical records, they estimated that the siblings had been confined shortly after their last sighting. Evidence suggested meticulous planning, indicating that the person responsible had taken extreme measures to ensure the prison remained undiscovered. Investigators were struck by the complexity of the hidden space. Reinforced walls, secret passages, and careful attention to concealment showed a level of preparation that was both deliberate and terrifying. Despite the passage of time, the room offered vital clues. Letters, photographs, and small mementos told a story of Mark and Lisa's daily lives in captivity. They had found ways to keep their spirits alive, leaving traces of their presence that revealed resilience in the face of fear. Investigators were moved by the strength and courage that the siblings had displayed, even when trapped in conditions that would have broken many people. Their writings revealed hope, love for each other, and small acts of ingenuity that showed determination and intelligence. The discovery also prompted authorities to revisit old leads and re-examine witness statements. People who had been interviewed years earlier were contacted again, with new details emerging as memories were refreshed by the shocking revelation. The search for the person responsible intensified, with detectives combing through city records, building permits, and property ownership histories. The mystery of who had created the hidden prison and why became the central focus of a nationwide investigation, one that captured the attention of true crime enthusiasts, journalists, and ordinary citizens alike. Community response was immediate. Local residents organized vigils and memorials for Mark and Lisa, hoping to honor their resilience and keep their story alive. Volunteers helped sort through evidence, provide support for the family, and document the findings in a way that could assist law enforcement. The city, which had long moved on from the Harpers' disappearance, now confronted a stark reality. A tragedy had unfolded in its midst, hidden yet profoundly present. People were reminded that even in places of light and joy, shadows could exist, hiding untold stories waiting to be discovered. As investigations continued, the Harpers' parents were finally allowed to see the hidden room under careful supervision. The moment was overwhelming. Every detail, from the personal belongings to the small signs of life within the prison, brought tears and memories rushing back. Relief, grief, and anger intertwined as they realized the extent of what their children had endured. The decades of uncertainty and worry were replaced by a painful understanding, one that was difficult to process but necessary to finally honor the truth. Law enforcement and forensic experts worked tirelessly to document the site, gather evidence, and begin piecing together the siblings' final days within the hidden prison. It became clear that while the Harpers had survived for years, their situation had been harrowing. Each discovery brought a mixture of sorrow and admiration for their courage. The evidence collected would later form the basis for a criminal investigation, a story of human resilience, and a reminder of the importance of vigilance in protecting the vulnerable. The discovery of the secret prison became a turning point, not only for the Harpers family, but also for the city of Las Vegas. It prompted changes in how abandoned and unused properties were monitored, encouraging stricter inspections and regulations to prevent hidden spaces from going unnoticed. Beyond the immediate investigation, the story became a symbol of hope, courage, and the human spirit's ability to endure unimaginable challenges. Mark and Lisa's experience, though tragic, inspired countless people to pay attention to the hidden dangers that can exist even in familiar environments. Their story reminded everyone that adventure can sometimes bring unexpected challenges, that trust must be tempered with caution, and that resilience is often discovered in the darkest moments. Though the siblings' ordeal had lasted nearly a decade, the discovery of the hidden prison finally brought answers, closure, and a sense of justice to a mystery that had haunted many for years. The discovery of the hidden prison changed everything. What had once been a cold, unanswered mystery now became a national story that people could no longer ignore. News spread quickly across the country, and soon the Harper siblings' names were being spoken again, this time with clarity instead of uncertainty. For years, Mark and Lisa Harper had existed only as missing faces on old posters and fading memories. Now, their story stood in the open, demanding understanding, accountability, and change. Law enforcement agencies worked together, sharing information that had once been scattered across different departments. Old case files were reopened, reviewed line by line. Detectives studied building ownership records, maintenance logs, and permits tied to the abandoned structure where the hidden prison was found. Slowly, a clearer picture began to form. The building had changed owners several times, often through shell companies and short-term agreements, making it difficult to track responsibility. Still, investigators were patient. They knew the truth would not reveal itself all at once. The journals found in the hidden room became one of the most important discoveries. Written in careful handwriting, they told the story of two people who refused to let their humanity disappear. Mark and Lisa had recorded their thoughts, memories, and hopes, using writing as a way to stay connected to the world they had lost. They wrote about their childhood, their parents, and the Christmas trip that had started everything. They reminded each other daily that they were more than their situation. These pages were handled with care, not only as evidence, but as proof of strength. Experts were brought in to help understand how the hidden space had gone unnoticed for so long. Engineers explained how reinforced walls and clever design had concealed the area from normal inspections. Urban planners admitted that older buildings often held surprises, especially when records were incomplete or outdated. This case exposed serious gaps in how abandoned properties were monitored. City officials could no longer deny that change was necessary. Public reaction was overwhelming. People across the country sent letters to the Harper family. Some shared their sympathy, while others expressed guilt for never noticing the signs. Many asked the same question: how could something like this exist in a city filled with people? Candlelight gatherings were held, not just in Las Vegas, but in towns far away. These gatherings were quiet and respectful, focused on remembering Mark and Lisa not as victims, but as individuals with lives, dreams, and voices. The Harper parents, now older and emotionally exhausted, faced the truth with remarkable grace. For years, they had lived between hope and despair. Now, although the truth was painful, it gave them something they had been denied for too long: answers. They spoke publicly only once, thanking investigators and the public for not forgetting their children. They asked that the story be used to protect others, not just to shock or entertain. As the investigation continued, a person of interest was identified based on property records and witness accounts from years earlier. Authorities were careful, knowing the importance of accuracy. Interviews were conducted, timelines verified, and evidence examined repeatedly. The process was slow but steady. Officials emphasized that justice was not about speed but truth. Even without immediate conclusions, the progress brought reassurance to those who had waited so long. Meanwhile, city leaders announced new safety measures. Abandoned buildings would now require regular inspections, even if privately owned. Hidden spaces had to be documented. Anonymous reporting systems were improved, allowing workers and residents to share concerns without fear. Training programs were created for demolition and maintenance crews, teaching them how to spot unusual structural features. These changes were directly inspired by the Harper case. Schools and community centers began using the story as a lesson in awareness and caution. Teachers spoke about trust, decision-making, and staying connected when traveling. Parents used the story not to frighten their children, but to encourage open communication. The focus shifted from fear to preparedness, from shock to responsibility. Mark and Lisa's experience became a reason to be more observant, more compassionate, and more proactive. The media also faced reflection. Many journalists acknowledged that missing person stories often faded too quickly. Coverage usually depended on attention and timing. The Harper case showed the long-term impact of forgetting. News outlets began revisiting older cases, giving space to stories that had once been ignored. This shift helped other families receive renewed attention and support. As months passed, the demolition site was cleared, but the memory of what was found there remained. A small memorial plaque was placed nearby, simple and quiet. It carried no dramatic language, only names and dates. People who passed by often stopped, not out of curiosity but respect. The city had learned that progress should never come at the cost of awareness. For investigators, the case became a reminder of why they chose their profession. Many admitted it had affected them deeply. Some kept copies of the journal's final pages, not as souvenirs but as motivation. They spoke of Mark and Lisa not as a case number, but as people who deserved to be heard. Their determination influenced younger officers and trainees, shaping how future investigations would be handled. The Harper siblings' story did not end with the discovery of the hidden prison. It continued in the changes made, the conversation started, and the awareness raised. Their voices, once trapped behind walls, now reached far beyond the city. They became symbols of resilience, not because of what they endured, but because they refused to disappear. In the end, the story was not just about a Christmas trip gone wrong. It was about how easy it is to overlook what is hidden, and how important it is to keep searching even when hope feels thin. It showed that time does not erase truth, it only delays it. And when truth finally emerges, it has the power to heal, to teach, and to protect others. Las Vegas returned to its lights and celebrations, but it was no longer the same city. Beneath the noise and brightness, there was a new understanding. Every place has unseen corners, and every person has a responsibility to look closer. Mark and Lisa Harper came to the city seeking joy and adventure. Though their journey ended in silence, their legacy spoke louder than anyone could have imagined. Their story became a quiet warning and a lasting promise that missing voices matter, that patience can uncover the impossible, and that even after years of darkness, truth can still find its way into the light.